Hello and welcome back. Now, in the last video, we gave our base item class a sphere component, and if we're not inside that sphere component, we will not trace for items, which means we will not set their widget visibility to true. But if we enter into the sphere, then suddenly we start tracing every frame, and when we trace and hit the item, if that item is derived from a item, we will then set the visibility of the widget to true. But we never actually set the visibility back to false. So in this video, we're going to need to take care of that. So let's get started. Now we're here in shooterCharacter.h in the private section, and we're going to add a new private variable. It's going to be of type A item, and so we're going to forward declare this variable of type A item. It's a pointer, and it's going to be called trace hit item last frame. And that's because we're going to want to store a reference to the item that we've traced last frame. Because as soon as we are no longer hitting an A item with our line trace, we're going to want to know what the A item was that we were hitting so that we can access that and set its visibility to false. So I'm going to give this a uProperty macro, and I'd like this to be visible anywhere so we can see it from blueprints but not be able to set it. Now I'd like it to be blueprint read only, and let's give this the category of items, and we're going to give it the meta specifier. Meta equals allow private access equals true. And I'm going to give this a comment, and we'll say the A item we hit last frame. Okay, so we have a variable to reference the A item that we hit last frame with our line trace. So back in shooterCharacter.cpp, we'll see in the tick function that we're calling this function trace for items. And if we go to trace for items, then we first check to see if we should trace for items. Then we actually trace under the crosshair, getting our item trace result. We check to see if that's a blocking hit, and then we get our hit item, which is the trace result actor cast to A item. Then we check to see if hit item is valid and hit item's pickup widget is also valid. Then we're going to get the hit item's pickup widget and set its visibility to true. We're going to make that widget visible. Now we're going to store the hit item that we hit in trace hit item last frame. So we're going to say trace hit item last frame equals hit item. So that means that if the actor we hit is not an A item, then hit item is going to hold a null pointer, in which case trace hit item last frame will hold a null pointer. But if the cast is successful, then trace hit item last frame will hold a reference to this item. So let's comment this and say store a reference to hit item for next frame. Now, before we do that, however, we're going to check to see if trace hit item last frame is valid, which means that last frame we set it to hit item and it was not null, it was an actual item. So this comment can say we hit an A item last frame. Now we need to see if trace hit item last frame is different than the hit item we hit this frame. So if hit item is not equal to trace hit item last frame, so this means that if the item that we're hitting this frame is different than the item we hit last frame, then we're no longer tracing and hitting the item that we hit last frame, which means we need to turn off the visibility of the widget for that item. Or hit item could be null, which means that we're actually not hitting an A item this frame at all because hit item is null. So we would still need to set the visibility to false for trace hit item last frame on its widget. So we're going to say trace hit item last frame get pickup widget set visibility to false. So here inside this if check, I'm going to say we are hitting a different A item this frame from last frame, or A item is null. So we hit an A item last frame, and we're either hitting a different A item this frame, or A item is null this frame. Either case, the item we hit last frame needs to turn off its widget. Now there's one more thing we should do, and that's if we should not trace for items. If B should trace for items is false, then that means we're no longer overlapping with an item, and we should come down here and put in an else if and check to see if trace hit item last frame is not null. So we've stopped overlapping, and now we need to see if we had an item last frame that we should turn off the widget for. So we're going to say no longer overlapping any items. Item last frame should not show widget. So we'll make this call to trace hit item last frame, get pickup widget, set visibility to false. Okay, let's give this a compile. And I'm getting a compiler error. And just so you know, when we get this particular error, where we get the exited with code 6, this is typically something to do with our uProperty or uFunction macro specifiers. And we can verify this by going into the editor and doing a hot reload and getting our log for the failed compilation, and this will usually tell us exactly what's wrong. And it says on line 214 of shooter character.h, blueprint read-only should not be used on private members. So let's take a look at shooter character.h. On line 214, here we have blueprint read-only, which should be okay with our meta specifier, so there must be a problem with our meta specifier. And there it is, typo here. I didn't type that final S in allow private access. Okay, let's give this a compile. So I'll hit play, and we'll make sure that we're still not showing the widget when we're not in the circle. Then once we're in the circle, then when I hover, it shows the widget. When I unhover, it doesn't show the widget. Now, when I back up out of the circle and I'm still hovering, it'll stop showing the widget, and it'll start when I'm in the circle. So there's that case. And finally, I want to check another case, and that's when I have two weapons, one behind the other, like this, and I come up to one, and I trace one, and then I trace the other one. And as soon as I stop tracing the one and start tracing the other one, I stop showing the widget for the first one, and I start showing the widget for the second one, and that's what's happening. So that looks good. Okay, so that concludes this video. We have now implemented the ability to stop showing the widget when we're no longer hovering over the widget, and also when we're no longer in the widget's area sphere. So I'll go ahead and go to the weapons folder and into base weapon, open that blueprint, and select the area sphere. I don't think we need to have hidden in game unchecked. So now I'm going to check hidden in game. So now we don't have to look at it anymore. And when we press play, now it just feels more natural. Once we're up close, then we show the widget. So that looks great. Okay, in the next video, we're going to continue working on this widget by binding some of its properties to variables on the item class, such as the item name, the icon, the amount, the rarity, the color of the widget, All those things will be bound to variables, so we're going to work on those in the videos to come. We'll see you in the next video.